There is exactly one moment in human history where the United States military officially announced the discovery of extraterrestrial technology. It was not a leak. It was not a rumor whispered by conspiracy theorists. On July 8, 1947, the Public Information Office at the Roswell Army Air Field, the most highly classified military base on the planet at the time, issued a definitive press release. They stated they had recovered a flying saucer from a ranch in the New Mexico desert. For exactly 24 hours, the world believed we were not alone. And then, the vault slammed shut. The military violently retracted the statement, claiming the wreckage was nothing more than a crashed rubber weather balloon. The debris was swept away, the witnesses were threatened into silence, and the greatest, most enduring cover-up of the 20th century was born. But the desert does not easily give up its ghosts. When you strip away the pop culture, the Hollywood movies, and the green aliens, what remains in the classified shadows of Roswell is a chilling paper trail of intimidation, impossible materials, and a secret so profoundly terrifying that the most powerful military on Earth spent the next 70 years trying to bury it.
Colonel, the metallurgy is unlike anything I've seen.
This operation is classified. Ensure your men understand that this never happened.
The storm that rolled over Corona, New Mexico, on the first weekend of July 1947 was violently unnatural. Local rancher Mac Brazel remembered the thunder sounding less like weather and more like massive, rolling explosions tearing the night sky apart. When the sun finally rose, Brazel rode his horse out to check his sheep. Instead of his flock, he found a debris field nearly a mile long and several hundred feet wide. It was a scattered, shimmering mess of metallic foil, strange rubber-like strips, and lightweight structural beams. But when Brazel and his family handled the wreckage, they realized they were holding something that defied the known laws of earthly physics. There was a thin metallic foil that looked exactly like standard aluminum, but when they crumpled it into a tight ball in their fists, it instantly unfolded itself back into a perfectly smooth sheet without a single crease. It could not be cut with a knife, it could not be burned, it could not be torn. Scattered among the foil were incredibly light I-beams. They felt like balsa wood, weighing almost nothing, yet they could not be broken, bent, or dented by any amount of force. And stamped along the inside of these indestructible beams were strange pinkish-purple symbols, hieroglyphics that matched no known human alphabet. Brazel knew immediately this was not a weather balloon. He gathered a box of the impossible metal and drove it to the local sheriff, who contacted the military. Within hours, intelligence officers from the 509th Bomb Group, the only atomic bomb squadron in the world, were dispatched to the desolate ranch. When Major Jesse Marcel, the base's top intelligence officer, arrived at the debris field, he stared at the scattered metal and made a chilling realization. Whatever this craft was, it had no engine, no wires, no propellers, and no vacuum tubes. It was a machine built by a science humanity did not possess. The military's initial reaction was not a calculated cover-up. It was blind, unadulterated panic. They had just found a crashed vehicle of completely unknown origin right next to the world's most sensitive nuclear base. The commanding officer, Colonel William Blanchard, authorized a press release stating they had secured a flying disc. He wanted the public to know the situation was under military control. The news exploded across the globe. Newspapers from London to Tokyo printed the headline, "RAAF captures flying saucer on ranch in Roswell region." But thousands of miles away in Washington, D.C., the Pentagon realized the catastrophic geopolitical implications. If the public, and more importantly, the Soviet Union, knew that America's heavily guarded nuclear airspace had been effortlessly breached by an otherworldly technology, the illusion of American supremacy would shatter instantly. The blackout was immediate, swift, and ruthless. Orders came down directly from General Roger Ramey. Within hours, the narrative was violently reversed. Major Jesse Marcel was ordered back to the base, stripped of the real evidence, and forced to pose for press photographs in a general's office. He was instructed to kneel next to pieces of a standard, shattered rubber weather balloon and tinfoil radar reflectors. If you look closely at those historical photographs, Marcel's face tells the entire story. He looks defeated. The real indestructible memory metal had vanished, secretly loaded onto heavily guarded B-29 bombers bound for Wright Field in Ohio. The official story was rewritten. The incident was closed. But the military knew that simply hiding the metal wouldn't be enough. To truly bury the Roswell incident, they had to systematically silence the people who had seen it. Roswell was a small, isolated desert town. Suddenly, it was swarming with armed military police. Soldiers cordoned off the Brazel Ranch. They formed a human chain, shoulder to shoulder, and walked across the desert floor, picking up every single microscopic scrap of the crash. They scoured the earth until it looked like nothing had ever happened. Then, the intimidation began. Mac Brazel, the rancher who found the debris, was detained by the military for nearly a week. When he finally emerged and spoke to the local radio station, he looked exhausted, terrified, and completely broken. He recited a stiff, scripted story about finding a rubber weather balloon. He never spoke of the incident again, and his family noted he suddenly had enough money to buy a new truck and open a meat locker. Local reporters were threatened with federal prison. The sheriff was told to forget everything he saw. The radio station owner was warned by the FCC that if he broadcast his original, unedited interview with Brazel, he would lose his broadcasting license immediately. For decades, the town of Roswell lived under a shadow of enforced silence. But military intimidation only works on the living. It cannot control the dead. And it was the dead that provided the most terrifying puzzle piece of the entire Roswell mystery. Glenn Dennis was a young mortician working at the Ballard Funeral Home in Roswell. He had a contract with the military base to handle casualties. On the afternoon of the crash, the base procurement officer called him with a highly unusual request. He wanted to know if Dennis had any small, hermetically sealed caskets in stock, specifically caskets small enough for a child. The officer also asked deeply specific questions about the chemical preparation of bodies that had been exposed to the elements and extreme predators. Later that evening, Dennis drove an injured airman to the base hospital. In the back of a military ambulance parked outside, he saw wreckage. Strange, dark metallic debris engraved with pinkish hieroglyphics. But before he could get a closer look, military police violently shoved him out of the building, threatening his life. But it was what his friend, a base nurse, told him the next day that cemented the horror of Roswell. She was deeply traumatized. Sitting in a diner, she sketched him a drawing on a prescription pad. She said she had been pulled into an examination room by 2 doctors who were performing a preliminary autopsy on 3 bodies. They were not human. They were small, frail, with oversized heads and large, dark, deeply set eyes. The smell in the room, she noted, was profoundly sickening. Shortly after that hushed conversation, the nurse was abruptly transferred to a base in England. Glenn Dennis never saw her again. The bodies, like the memory metal, vanished into the labyrinth of the American military-industrial complex. For nearly 50 years, the government refused to acknowledge the events of July 1947. In the 1990s, under immense public pressure, the U.S. Air Force released a final, definitive report on Roswell. They claimed the debris was from Project Mogul, a top-secret surveillance balloon meant to listen for Soviet nuclear tests. And the bodies that witnesses saw? The government claimed they were just anthropomorphic crash test dummies dropped from the sky. But the timeline doesn't fit. The military didn't start using those crash test dummies until the mid-1950s, almost a decade after Roswell. Crash test dummies don't bleed. You don't need hermetically sealed child-sized caskets for wooden mannequins. And you do not threaten an entire town with federal prison over a weather balloon. The Roswell incident is not just a story about a crashed saucer. It is a story about the terrifying efficiency of a shadow government. If they could successfully erase physical evidence, intimidate an entire town, and rewrite history in 1947, what else are they hiding today? When you look up at the night sky, you have to ask yourself, are we alone, or are we just being managed? Welcome to Arcanum. If you seek the truth hidden in the classified shadows, subscribe and leave a mark in the comments below. Do you believe the official story?